Right then, King Krush, 9 mana, 8/8 beast.
You started with King Krush. Why have you started with King Krush? Cenarius should be first if we're going with.
Oh, no, I've buggered it.
All right, should we do that again? Do that link up again?
I think that'd be best. Now then, everyone, this is the first episode of Highlander, the show where we talk about every single legendary card in Hearthstone. I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Jamie. Are you there, Jamie?
Hiya.
And I'm James, telling you to pull up a chair, get comfy, because we're going to talk about some cards. Given that it's the first episode, it'd probably be best to start with who we are, how we got into the game, what game modes we play and such like. So why don't you start, Jamie?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of started during the midst of the Undertaker Hunter meta, which wasn't exactly enjoyable, so I quit then. One of my friends suggested I pick it back up during a roughly Whispers of the Old Gods release, and ever since I've been playing it a lot. Started off playing just standard, but about a year after I played a bit of Wild, and since then it's been about 50-50 with a slight bias on Wild.
And just for context, people, this is back when Wild was simply standard with Dr. Boom and Sludge Belcher in it, and as some people still think it is.
Yeah, well, when standard got power crept a lot, it was still like that, to be honest. Like when it was, a Q block and odd paladin and things like that.
Well, I think I started playing around Nax, and I didn't really play for that long, and then I took a break from the game. Came back when League of Explorers came in, took another little break, played a bit more when Whispers of the Old Gods came in, took another little break, came back with Ungoro, took another little break, and then eventually you got me playing again just around the middle of the Knights of the Frozen Throne expansion.
Yeah.
And then I've just been playing pretty much ever since. I hadn't really touched standard with a 10-foot pole in Yonks. I just play Wild, to be honest with you, for various reasons. It's one I just find more fun, to be honest, so that's what I do.
Can I just say, we're starting with classic legendaries and then moving forwards. I think we're moving forwards in time.
We're starting with a classic set today, and then eventually we will run to whatever the latest set is when you're listening to this episode. Without any further ado, we should probably start talking about our first card. Millhouse Manastorm. 2 mana, 4/4 minion. Battle Cry. Your opponent's spells cost 0 next turn.
What an opener.
Oh, I know. Don't say I don't know how to pick them.
It's a real contender for the worst card in the game. There's not many cards that you can play and just immediately lose on the spot, but Millhouse certainly fits that bill.
Yeah, it's certainly one of a few. What is it? There's Duskfall and Aviana from the Witchwood, and there's Majordomo Executors from Blackrock as cards where you just lose.
Especially in Wild if you're playing against Druid.
Think about it, I did actually see a video of someone the other day coining out Millhouse against what I presume is a combo Druid in Wild, and what happened was the player who played Millhouse lost that same turn, because I think they ramped to 10, played a couple of Ultimate Infestations, just hit them in the face for over 30, and that was a lot, really.
I mean, that sounds about right, to be honest.
Well, I had a thought maybe at the start of the game, when there aren't that many expensive spells like Ultimate Infestations or Overflows, I'm trying to think of something that's not a Druid spell now, but when there aren't all these really expensive spells at the start of the game to cheat out, maybe it's actually worth the risk to play Millhouse. I mean, I'm just saying this because me and they weren't playing them, but turns out it's actually still crap.
Because even back at the start of the game, the popularity of Freeze Mage throughout meant that even then playing Millhouse wasn't worth it because you just get burned out and have him removed at the same time.
It's worth pointing out there was a semi-serious period of experimentation with Millhouse when even Paladin first became a thing.
Because it's a good off of Call to Arms, obviously.
Yeah. So for anyone not playing the game at this point, Call to Arms at this point was a 4 mana recruit free 2 or lower cost minions from your deck. Paladin spell, obviously. Recruit is a keyword added in Kobolds and Catacombs, and it means summon that minion from your deck. So this means that you get all the benefits of Millhouse's 2 mana 4/4 sweet supple body without the horrendous downside.
But even then, it was the fringe build.
Yeah, because if you drew him, then you would just end up with a card that you can't use. And if you're playing an aggro or mid-range deck, that's a situation you absolutely do not want.
I think that's covered it.
We love you, Millhouse, but you're rubbish. Alright, card number 2. The Black Knight. 6 mana 4/5 minion. Battlecry, destroy an enemy minion with taunt. Jamie, I believe you've got some personal history with the Black Knight.
Yeah, it was my first classic legendary. And it was golden as well, so that was because I had no idea really the significance of it being golden, and one of my friends who was in the game at the same time was just kind of shocked that the first one I got was, a golden.
I had to wait years for mine.
It's a very powerful tech card. That's the thing to say about it.
Oh yeah, compare it to something like Siphon Soul. So you put a body on the board instead of restoring some health in exchange for some prerequisites, shall we say. Card did see play at the start of the game and into Nax in control decks like Control Warrior or Handlock.
Because that was quite a common interaction, was Black Knight into Sludge Belcher, and at that point it was like Dr. Boom being the top tier mid-range power level card. Obviously a 6 mana 4/5 at that point wasn't so bad on its own.
Yeah, if it didn't hit out.
But if it hit a Belcher, which it often did, that was quite good. I mean, I used to put the card in every deck I made, but that's kind of comes with the territory.
But as the game's gotten older, you don't really see him anymore.
Yep, even when the meta was very heavily populated with taunts, the card still wasn't often worth putting into a deck specifically.
I mean, in the, few thousand games of Wild I've played, I've never seen anyone main the Black Knight, even though the format is absolutely full of massive taunts that people like to cheat out. I think there's a few reasons for this. First is that taunts are much more sticky than they were at the start of the game. So like a Void Lord summons 3 minions when you kill it, and that's frequently coming out on turn 5 or 6. The other reason is just that decks in Wild are so synergistic at this point that your tech cards better either be consistent, like Dirty Rat or Skulking Geist, where they don't require your opponent to do something, or be synergistic in some way so they're, not as bad to put in your deck, and the Black Knight is just not filling either of those criteria.
Even Standard's been power crept quite a lot, and it's a really fast format. For the card to come back, it'd have to be a really slow format. I suspect the card would only see play in Highland decks.
I mean, I'm like a complete outsider to what is in Standard at the moment, but are there not lots of big taunts that maybe you might want to run the Black Knight for? Is it just not good enough for that?
The thing with it is that Resurrected Priest has been around in Standard for a long, long time now. And that's all about playing and resurrecting taunts. And even then, the Black Knight didn't see any play.
So let me ask you this. What do you think they'd have to do to make the Black Knight playable in Standard? Because obviously, if you, like you say, an abundance of taunts is still not making it worth playing. What do you think they'd actually have to do? Like maybe put it down to 5 so it's not as bad to tempo out? It's just that fine line between, it being a tech card, so it has to be not great to play out on tempo, but not terrible.
But even 5 mana, it'd have to have decent stats for 5 mana, because we've seen like EMP Operative. That's obviously an atrocious tech card. You have to compare things to that, right?
So maybe putting it down to 5 and keeping the stats the same might be enough. I mean, you never want to make it too strong. It's got it to niche and killing Emerald Explorers, but that niche is slowly shrinking. Alright, next card. Alexstrasza. 9 mana, 8/8 dragon. Battlecry, set a hero's elf to 15.
Wowie.
Yep.
Bit of a change in power level.
You might see this one in a deck. Do you want to talk about this one first?
Yeah, I can cover it. It's exceptionally powerful card. Caused problems. Problems maybe isn't the right word, but it's been high power level in Standard forever, really.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a commonly talked about option for the Hall of Fame this year. I'm quite surprised it managed to survive. I suspect it won't survive another year.
So, why do you reckon the card is so ubiquitous and popular in Standard?
It's such a unique effect. And it means that for control decks, you can do nothing the whole game as far as pressure goes. And then on turn 9, deal 15 damage to the opponent's face and play an 8/8. And then that you're immediately within range of being able to pressure them down.
The first archetype I think of when you say that sort of play style is like old school Control Warrior.
Yep.
Where you basically sit there, do nothing, play Alex, and then next turn you play Grom, activate him with Whirlwind or Inner Rage or something, and then hit him in the face for a lot of damage.
There's plenty of things like that, really. Mage, Freeze Mage. Alexstrasza on turn 9 and turn 10, double fireball frostbolt, and that's just 15.
So how are people using Alexstrasza in standard like nowadays?
The main deck the cards he's playing is Galakron, like Hand Warlock. That deck's obviously been tier 1 or 2 since it was released, essentially, since people refined it. And Alexstrasza is one of the particularly powerful cards in that deck because it gives you lots of reach with Nether Breath and the 5/2 weapon that you get off of the Galakron Battle Cry.
Am I right in saying it's in some of the Highlander decks as well?
Yeah, it's an Highlander mage.
Ah, right, okay. I get you.
Because it's a dragon activator and gives the deck reach.
Yeah.
Those are the main decks. I think it sees play in the Embiggen Big Druid as well from time to time. And that was tier 1 in second half of the Sense of Dragons meta as well. So
it's kind of a mystery how Wild is such a completely different story to this, because if you look at the card and think 9 mana, deal 15 damage to the opponent's face, and summon an 8/8 dragon, you think, oh, that's insane. And it is. But there are so few Wild decks that actually run it.
Wild's a bit of a different story because of how much faster Wild is.
Yeah, it sees playing in the dragon variant of Reno Priest sometimes, and occasionally Reno Quest Mage as well.
Yeah, if you're running like Malygos Aspect of Magic or whatever it's called.
One of the problems about Alex in Wild is it's generally considered kind of slow, but Reno Quest Mage can actually get around this because you essentially generate 2 free turns using Open the Waygate, which is the quest reward from Ungoro, and Archmage Vargoth, which essentially generates not 1 free turn, but, a second free turn, which is fun. And basically you're using Alex as like a Pyroblast. The most notorious sort of mana cheating burn combo in Wild is probably Malygos Druid, which uses Aviana Kun. And then you essentially play Malygos for 1, duplicate it somehow using manipulators or Floop or something like that.
Yeah.
And you just hit him in the face with Moonfire and Swipe and stuff like that. But you don't really see Alex played in Wild in that deck because it just does so much damage anyway. You just don't really need it. You'd rather have 1 less dead card in your hand.
That does enough damage anyway. You don't need the Alexstrasza. I mean, burn combos in Wild all do way overkill damage anyway. There's the odd exception, like Malygos Warlock's quite specific. That has a lot of mid-range pressure as well. It's not just like a pure combo deck like the Druid version.
It'd be such a shame if it were to get Hall of Famed and then hardly anyone were to use it. You know what I mean? Like, for such an iconic card.
Well, I'm not necessarily advocating for it to be sent to the Hall of Fame, but I seem to recall it being mentioned quite a lot. It's just a very powerful card, really. It gives control decks an option that they perhaps shouldn't have. But even then, control decks are often kind of somewhat built around being able to do this massive amount of burn damage.
Well, it might go to Wild at some point, but for now, here be dragons. It's another card I wanted for ages and then I barely ended up using. It's Baron Geddon. 7 mana, 7/5. At the end of your turn, deal 2 damage to all other characters. And it's also an elemental. This is a card that saw quite a bit of play at the start of the game, but now sees virtually none, at least in Wild. I'm not really sure about Standard.
I think you've summed it up pretty accurately, to be honest.
Oh, thanks.
It was quite good in the early stages of the game because it's, a consistent AoE effect. It's good for a control deck. It's obviously got quite good stats as well. It can put a bit of pressure on whilst also keeping hold of the board.
Yeah, I think Handlock run it a little bit.
Control Warrior is the main one, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. You very quickly see this trend through the game where Baron is quickly cut from lists as better AoE options come out. For example, like consider Priest's range of AoE now compared to the start of the game, or Mages or Warlocks. It's just so much better. And the design team has often made a point of saying that they want class cards to be better than neutral cards, so each class is a different identity. So it always should be better than Baron, but it's completely surpassed that now that even many of the classes that don't have inherently good AoE, like Hunter, just never ever run Baron.
It's just kind of mediocre when you compare it to other options. Like, it's very clearly an old card, right? It's clearly a card that was designed for the start of the game, and it just hasn't aged particularly well. You compare it to something like Dustbreaker or Crazy Netherwing in Standard now. If you compare either of those two to Baron, it doesn't look particularly favourable for him, really.
I mean, there are a few reasons why those cards in particular seem to outclass him, and I guess the first is the fact that Baron comes down on 7 instead of 4 or 5 like the other two.
Well, that's the thing, is that dealing 2 at 7 mana is not good enough.
The advantage that Baron has over something like Dustbreaker is the fact that it's persistent, so that effect carries on, whereas Dustbreaker, you play it and it's had its day, you know? So you wonder maybe if they flipped the stats on it, so they made it like a 7 mana 5/7 or something like that, so it's much harder to kill. Maybe that would go some way to making it more viable.
Even then, I don't think it makes the cut as it is. It would have to be, it'd have to cost less. I think it'd have to be 5 mana, not necessarily with the same stats, but I think 5 mana is the maximum cost that it can be.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that deal 2 on 7 is just not going to be good enough anymore. So let's hope that they give it some much needed attention. Hopefully.
Well, given that they just reworked the whole priest set, I think they're, like you say, they're open to reworking cards.
The main deck that it sees play and has seen much more play in the past was Reno Mage.
Oh yeah.
This is because you have the hero card Frostlet's Jaina, and that means your elementals have lifesteal. So obviously if Baron has lifesteal, he's dealing 2 damage to everything. You're healing for quite a lot each turn. It's almost like a Reno Jackson. But as the deck has become more refined and the game has become a bit faster, people generally just run Ragnaros now, which is another elemental, which is a bit more proactive, as opposed to Baron, which is kind of subpar, as we'll get into probably.
Absolutely. When that deck, the sort of big spell mage, originally became popular in Standard after Cobalt and Catacombs, Baron was quite common in the slower versions. It slowly got phased out kind of as a tech card more so than a staple, but it was still fairly commonly used. But as you say, as after Jaina rotated to Wild, it was used in that deck for a bit, but it had kind of been phased out again because there's just better options than it.
Do you think maybe it could work with like more elemental synergies? I don't really know how many are in Standard at the moment, you know, because I don't really keep track.
There are very few elemental synergies in Standard now.
Okay.
Elemental Evocation is just about the only reason to do anything like that. But even then, that sort of Elemental Evocation deck isn't really good enough.
God damn it. Well, I think you're going to have to change the card, Blizzard, if you want it to see more play. Just make it a 10-10, you know?
Yeah, that sounds realistic, to be fair, yeah.
Ten mana, 12/12 dragon. Battlecry, destroy all minions and discard your hand. It is, of course, Deathwing.
I mean, it's the ultimate Hail Mary, isn't it, really? It's like, if you've got no other options, you just slam Deathwing down and just hope it goes well.
I absolutely love the animation for this card. It's just so... it's cool.
Yeah, well, it didn't have an animation for a long, long time. But yeah...
Did they rework Twisting Nether as well, or am I imagining that?
Twisting Nether's animation's always been quite good, but...
Okay.
I can't remember what other ones they reworked when they reworked Deathwing. I'm not sure if it was many.
Was it Illidan?
Oh yeah, and Blood Mage Thalanos, that was it. They gave it a little like puff out of the deck.
Ah, yes.
We've been reduced to talking about the animation. That's never really a good sign for the quality of the card, really, is it?
It's probably worth talking about the rare instance that Deathwing has actually seen competitive play, because for a long time, Naut ran him, but when Cobalt and Catacombs came out, a deck called Dragon Druid started being played, and this was a deck where you could pretty much consistently cheat out Deathwing and not trigger his horrendous downside.
Back when Deathwing Dragon Lord was about...
Yeah, and Dragon Archer.
Like you say, I think it was Big Druid used to run that sort of engine. That was effective, but as you say, the card never really saw any play.
Oh, yeah, outside of that deck, yeah.
My experience with Deathwing has been that I end up playing against it or with it quite a lot, but it's always off of RNG effects. Most of the time you see it off of the Draconic Lucky Discover, because if you're playing, I don't know, say Galakron Rogue and you're running out of cards in hand, you just jam Deathwing after your opponent's exhausted their removal. That can sometimes just win you the game when otherwise you wouldn't.
Oh, aye, and it's good in those fringe scenarios where you've got the ability to just pick this massive card and just say, right, I'm going to wait for this scenario that I know is going to happen. But the thing is when you're building your deck, you can't really plan for those sort of scenarios because they don't happen very often. and it's often just a dead card in your hand that you don't want to play.
It's just because of the nature of the card. I mean, the card does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be the ultimate Hail Mary. It's supposed to just be all in or nothing. And it does that perfectly, but that isn't very good because you need consistency.
I find Deathwing's like lack of play to be really interesting because of the fact that if you look at the start of the game when the power level is significantly lower and a lot of classes don't really have lots of good AoE, people don't like playing Deathwing even then because of the prevalence of Big Game Hunter. So this is obviously back at 3 mana, 4/2, Battlecry Destroyer, minion with 7 or more attack. So you do your Deathwing, lose your hand and your board, and then suddenly there goes your Deathwing, all for 3 mana.
Because of Doctor Boom being 7 attack, it was quite often a 2-of, I think.
To be honest with you, besides from that Dragon Druid one, I can't really think of any time that Deathwing's seen like massive amounts of competitive play, you know?
Another example of where you saw Deathwing a lot was when Spiteful Summoner ran the format for a bit. If you're playing Druid, you always pulled UI, so you got a 10 drop. And the 10 drop was quite often Deathwing.
What's that? 6 mana, 16/16 in stats, something like that?
Yeah.
There we go then.
So it's useful as a overstated 10 drop that you can get off of an RNG effect. But yet again, we're just talking about RNG effects here. But you very rarely actually put it in the deck.
I can remember Fibonacci putting it in some Control Warrior list as a tech, but that's the most I've seen anyone actually put it in a deck for some sort of purpose that's not Dragon Druid.
I've just checked on HS Replay, and apparently Deathwing is not being played in any popular deck.
What is what?
So that's pretty accurate summation, I would think.
What a shock. I mean, I think he summed it up pretty well earlier, where we don't really want to change the card because it's obviously like not very viable at the moment, but it's, like you say, a Hail Mary, last resort, and that's fine. I really enjoy that this card exists. It's like everyone knows Deathwing, don't they? Like, if you want a competitive version, just go play Mad Aspect, you know? That card sees play at the moment.
It's iconic, right? I don't think it needs to be changed just to make it see play. Like, if people want to put Deathwing in the deck to have fun, they can.
Obviously, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the best thing that you could do with Deathwing, which is head over to Wild, which you should do anyway, and put in all 4 Deathwings into a deck. So play Warrior, Mad Aspect, normal Deathwing, Dragon Lord, and play as Deathwing, and voila! You have a terrible deck, but you have also put all 4 Deathwings into your deck, so you have actually won the game.
I disagree. I think the best thing you can do with Deathwing in Wild is play Cube, Aviana, Druid, preferably Major Dome or Clockwork Automaton for the 500 and something damage hero power, whatever it is.
Good choice, mate. That is a proper lovely sight.
That's top quality, that is.
Let's talk about Cenarius.
I'll cover this one then. It's a 9 mana 5/8 with Battle Cry, choose one, give your other minions +2/+2, or summon 2/2/2 Trents with taunts.
Jamie, this card sees absolutely no play in Wild. Please tell me about it in Standard.
Okay, I guess it's on me, this one. So Cenarius, in the early stages of the game, it used to see playing some versions of Ramp Druid because it's quite good stats when you look at it. If you just play it as the taunt version, it's a 9 mana 9/12, of which 4/4 has taunts. That's good stats, really. The problem with it is it's 9 mana, and 9 mana is just not a particularly strong mana spot for like a stat-based card. And Cenarius is just a sort of big ton of stats. At least that was how it was for a while.
The first deck I'm sort of aware of it popping up in is Whispers of the Old Gods Token Druid. So Cenarius here was used as like a finisher, you know, as either a final buff or some sort of like way to put a bunch of stats on the board and the opponent probably couldn't remove it and then you'd go on to win the game or buff up the treants or something like that. And part of what made Cenarius really good in this deck was the fact that Fandral had just been released. And this is a minion that makes both effects of the choose one card happen at the same time. So Cenarius is going to summon the treants and buff them.
So it's like a minimum 13, 16 of stats. Sorry, took me a second.
I'm not shortening that gap at all.
Okay. Minimum 13, 16 of stats.
And this is all in like one card as well. This isn't even regarding, you know, if you've got any other minions on the board when you play this. So you can kind of see why in 2016 this is a really powerful play in that kind of token-based deck. You know, this sort of stuff where you got loads of stuff on the board in the late game, and this is like a final push to get through. And if you got Fandral on the board in a deck full of choose one cards like Raven Idol, you know, Cenarius suddenly seems really, really strong as a finisher.
I didn't see it for a long, long time, to tell you the truth, but last summer, when Saviors of All Doom was released, that's when it's really had its resurgence.
In case you're listening to this in the way off future, this druid quest from Saviors of All Doom means that you have to spend 4 turns with unspent mana at the end of them, and then your hero power changes so all of your choose one effects are combined. So imagine that really powerful play with Fandral on the board, and you play Cenarius, but now Fandral doesn't even have to be there because his effect is consistent. So Cenarius is always going to do both choose one effects.
And Quest Druid, the way it kind of operates, it usually has some other minions on the board, and like it's just a really powerful finisher in that deck, or at least it kind of had, it was up until Ashes of Outland. It's gotten a little bit worse as the deck has. The deck's like lost quite a lot of win rate since the rotation, but from when Uldum was released up until the rotation, Quest Druid was pretty much tier 1 win rate.
This is a little bit off topic, but what exactly happened between the rotation that caused the deck's like win rate to plummet?
I think part of the problem with it is it dies horribly to Demon Hunter. Quest Druid's weakness is aggro before it can stabilise and play its Oasis.
I'm trying to think of cards it lost.
It was particularly good before the rotation because of Libidinous Flute being able to copy it for 4 mana. The loss of Floop has made it a lot less powerful.
Oh, and Lottie, she left as well, didn't she?
Absolutely. That card was very powerful in the deck.
Well, we should probably talk about why the card doesn't really see play, hasn't seen play, and probably will never see play in Wild.
The problem with it in Wild is that 9 mana needs to be a lot more than some stats for it to actually work in Wild.
If you look at all of the board-centric Wild Druid decks, you've got Aggro Druid, which is way, way too fast for this card. They typically top out at 4, if not 3. You've got Token Druid, which is typically trying to summon a massive board on turn 4, then buff it up and use Soul of the Forest to make it really sticky and hard to kill. Again, that doesn't want Cenarius because 9 mana is just so much to pay. As we've said, combining both of Cenarius' effects is really powerful, and currently, Choose One Druid is kind of an archetype in Wild, and even then it's a worse version of Jade Druid, and that deck does not care about having +2/+2 stat increases on board on turn 9. Cenarius just doesn't fit the game plan at all, even though it's more powerful with the quests. The guy has no place in that format, and I'm really sad to say that because I don't like saying that, but I just cannot see a reason to ever play him.
I think we've covered most of what we can say about the card, really. It's not one with a lot of options.
Get ready, everyone. Extremely complicated card coming up. It's 9 mana, 8/8 charge beast. It's King Krush, Hunter Legendary. Jamie, I believe you once called this card the most boring legendary in all of Hearthstone.
Oh, well, it is the most... Well, I don't remember saying that, but it wouldn't surprise me if I did say that.
No, you definitely said that.
No, I probably did, because I'm not technically wrong there. It is boring.
Technically.
It's just a big chunk of stats for charge, but it's great.
Oh, it's true, yeah.
It's quite in keeping with Hunter. It's just, here's this massive beast, hit face. Do other than that with the card, it's just me smack face.
Fantastic. To be fair to our lad Jamie, I have thrown him in it a bit here, because the card was a complete meme for years. It's an aggressive card that's costed way, way too high. I mean, look at Leroy, right? Busted card at 4 mana, still a meta warping card at 5 in standard. Same effect, just 2 less damage for 4 less mana. It's completely crazy.
It's a big charge, and 9 mana is not an aggro mana cost. Reckless Rocketeer or Argent Commander strike me as being better cards than Krush, and even then neither of those are particularly good. It just doesn't really line up.
So what we're going to do is jump forward a few years to the end of 2017, with Kobolds and Catacombs being released, and King Krush finds himself not only being widely played, but in a high-tiered deck.
A staggeringly powerful expansion by all accounts. I think I can safely say it's the most powerful ever.
If it's not Knights of the Frozen Throne, then it's this. And the card that really helps King Krush in this expansion is a legendary minion for Hunter called Kathrina Winterwisp, which reads 8 mana, 6/6, Battlecry and Death Rattle. Recruit a beast from your deck.
The obvious way of using this is just play a select few large beasts that have like particularly weak effects when played out of hand. So take King Krush, it's a 9 mana 8/8 with charge. That's not great out of hand, but if you couple that with a 6/6 that summons another big beast on turn 8, that gets pretty strong.
Yep, and it helps that deck also had other big beasts that could cheat out. So for example, Charged Devilsaur, which is an 8 mana 7/7 charge, with the unfortunate battle cry of can't attack your opponent this turn. But that doesn't matter, because you've just recruited out of your deck. You also used to use this brand new shiny minion in Seeping Oozling, which copies a minion's Death Rattle out of your deck. So if you copy Kathrina's Death Rattle, use Play Dead on it or something, some way to trigger the Death Rattle early. Loads of value. Lots of mana cheating. Fantastic.
That was the way to build the deck from when Kobolds was released up until the next expansion. You also used to run it with Silver Vanguard, which is a 7 mana 3/3 with Death Rattle, summon an 8-cost minion out of the deck. That would summon either your Charged Devilsaur or the Lich King, which is a good 8-drop essentially.
Yeah, we'll cover that at a future date, I think.
Exactly. After the next expansion released, it got heavily focused on Devilsaur Egg and using that with Cube, Carnivorous Cube, instead of the Oozling stuff. The Kathrina at top end was still the same, and King Krush still was the best pull off of that.
So once again, as someone who doesn't really play Standard, how good was this deck at this point in the game? Because I've played against it a fair bit in Wild.
Oh, it was the best deck. It was tier 1 and the best deck in the game for a long time, really.
Bloody no, I nearly spat my tea out. Bloody hell.
It was at least tier 1 for basically the whole year. I think it was the most consistently powerful deck of the whole year, because other decks got nerfed, but it didn't really get nerfed at all. So it kind of kept its relevance and power.
Unfortunately, when Kathrina rotated, King Krush once again dropped back to his prehistoric, abysmal levels of play.
That's the reason King Krush is remotely good at any point, essentially.
If we look at the Hunter forecast, Jamie, can we see a place for King Krush in Standard this year?
Do you know what? It's had a bit of a resurgence recently in a personal favourite deck of mine, which is the Beastmaster Leorox combo Hunter, where you copy King Krush in hand and then play Beastmaster Leorox to summon 3 King Krushes out of hand and hit for 24 or more if you've managed to buff them. It's frankly,
go on.
It's a bit of a meme, really, but it's very entertaining.
Bloody memes!
I'm looking at the win rates for the deck now, and there's a few that are over 50.
Alright, so we're definitely not in tier 1 best deck of the format territory. We're definitely in functional meme with good intentions territory at this point, right?
Absolutely.
Thing is, if we know anything from this entire podcast, it's that mana cheat is king. Given that this combo is going to be in Standard for about 2 years, they must find some way to absolutely break the game at that point, right? Come on, it's got to happen.
Mana cheat is almost always the cause of the problems in the game's balance. Like, look at Skull of Gul'dan, right? I mean, that's a prime example. Like, even now it's still a problematic card at 6 mana. But at 5 mana, it was just completely ridiculous.
And speaking of skulls, you've also got, from Cobalt and Catacombs, Skull of the Minari as well.
Oh, well, I mean, that's still an incredibly powerful card, even now in Wild. Like, Skull on 5 will just win the game if it goes unchallenged.
Standard players, you have 2 years to completely abuse and break this combo. Do it! So, how was it for you?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. It's just good to waffle, isn't it? About
hey, I'm here trying to keep professional standards, and you just want to waffle. Don't worry, mate. I'm gonna have to edit all this down. I didn't really quite realise how much waffling there'd be, but I did promise, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. I'd offer to help, but I don't have a clue with it. To be honest with you, mate.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Okay, cheers.
It's been great fun.
You should probably say where you can find. Well, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. I mean, if the people found this episode, they can probably know where to find the others if we end up making them, because they're in the future.
Smash a like on the podcast and turn on notifications. There you go.
Thanks for that, Jamie. In all seriousness, I hope you enjoyed listening and stay safe up there.
Indeed, thanks for listening.
I've been doing this from memory, but I can't remember what Cenarius does.
Okay, well,
Christ.
fair point.